When I sit in a movie theater, and the first time you appear on the screen in Yentl, the audience applauds.
Really?
Yes, really. I didn't come all this way to lie to you. And at the end of the movie, when it says directed by Barbra Streisand, people start to applaud.
Isn't that nice?
Yes, it is.
The projectionist told me that at the Village Theatre.
Oh, you knew this already?
Well, he told me, because he said, you've got to come here and listen to the applause at the end, because I snuck in one night, but I always escape before the end, you know? And he told me, well, come up in the box and listen to this, because it's quite exciting, you know? And I just love that. I feel so good about people. I feel so good about the audience who are supporting this film, you know? It's like, when I was trying to sell this to a studio, any studio, all studios, before UA said they would do it, I mean, I always thought, in my naive way, that why wouldn't everyone love this story? I found this story so charming, such a possibility for entertainment, you know. I just thought everyone would love to see it, you know, and I couldn't understand why people were saying, nobody's going to want to see a story about a girl called Yentl, much less. What's a Yentl, you know? A girl who wants to pursue an education and therefore blah, 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 blah. But of course, that's only the background of a story that's about love, a story that's about the love of learning, a story that's about the love between parent and child, a man and a woman, two women, two men, friends. And as I say, it's ultimately about the love for oneself. I mean, a positive, healthy love for oneself. Self-acceptance, you know, for your total being. So I was scared. Boy, I was really scared, you know. The first day this movie opened, I went to the theater and just made sure the sound was right and the picture was right, and then I went to the nearest candy store and bought all the candy I could find and all the cookies I could find and a ham and cheese croissant and everything fattening, you know.
No ice cream?
Stuffed my face, no. You know, just trying to fill that fear of that nobody would show up. Maybe they were all right and they never should have made this movie. It's a terrible responsibility to have, when a studio gives you $14.5 million to make a movie, I feel very financially responsible, which is, I think, some of the studio's fears, you know, that a woman couldn't be financially responsible. And I found that quite exciting, you know, in being able to control the money as well as the artistic integrity of the film, because they go hand in hand. Art is disciplined. Art has boundaries. Art has limits. You know, you have to create the scene, but you have X amount of dollars to do it, and you have X amount of time. That's life. Life is compromise. Life is imperfection, you know. So my so-called perfectionism is quite realistic, you know, about the imperfection in perfection. And one wouldn't want everything, you know, perfect, because it's too sterile, it's too inhuman. It's the striving for perfection that interests me.
You make me think of Hume Cronin's wonderful line. He said at one point, discussing his craft, perfectionism is a terrible burden and one I wish I didn't have. And you have it too.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's hard unless you're surrounded by people who also are perfectionists, you know, who also know that there's a better one. You know, that yes, let's wait for the sun to be right. Let's wait for the cloud to come over. Let's do this, let's do that. But they're, you know, in doing several jobs, the producer can serve the director. The actress can serve the director. Everyone can serve the vision of this film. So they make a big deal out of the fact they did all these jobs. I guess they're making a big deal about it because I'm a woman. They don't seem to make such a big deal out of it when a man does it.
Is that why you really won't tolerate hearing the word bitch, because you know it's pejorative and it's not applicable? And you find it sexist?
Oh, yeah. It's very unfair. It's very unfair, but that's, you know, that's the way society has set it up. I mean, that if a woman wants to get into the realms of a man's world, she's just, they use different adjectives to describe her. I don't know why. I mean, you know, society has set it up so that life works well, as the woman staying home and taking care of the children, the man is the breadwinner. But then when the individual, you know, cries out to say, wait a minute, maybe this man wants to stay home and take care of his child. Maybe this woman wants to go out and win the bread. Or maybe there's, you know, I'm for equality, and I'm for individualism. So that's what I strive for.
One of the points in this conversation has been sexual ambiguity, sexual identity. And you say this, and we mustn't minimize that before Bonnie and Clyde, and long before Reds, there weren't many kind words said about Warren Beatty. It was after Bonnie and Clyde and after Reds that the recognition was given.
There's a kind of Victorianism, by the way, I think, about actors, you see, and that I even felt as an actress. An actress is a loose woman, you know. An actress is vain. And somehow when the actor or actress then becomes the businessman, the administrator, the establishment, the enemy, then all of a sudden he's respected. In other words, when Warren became a producer, handled money, picture was a success, he had newfound respect. If he was just an actor, well, he's just an actor. And I think the same thing applies with an actress. So the idea is that the actress can be the producer, you know, that the actress can be the director. The director is, it's a kind of male profession to handle tracks and, you know, and lenses and cameras. They seem to be associated with men. I don't know why. Do you?
If you don't know at this point, I don't know.
Yeah.
You've given 20 years of your life to it. I just think it's interesting that when a
15.
man... Sorry. Okay, I'll take out the theater credits. When a man does it, when he gets up and does this, they say, boy, he's got balls.
Excuse me,
When a
can you
woman
say that
does
stuff
it...
on your show?
Say what? When a woman does it, they say, what a ball breaker.
That's amazing. I'm just shocked that you can talk like that on your show.
Don't you talk that way?
No.
Never?
Well, I sometimes, but I don't
I
say
just
those
think
things for public consumption.
we're talking
Do you have
about
nudity on your show too?
intermittently. You should
In
be there
England they
Friday
do.
nights at midnight.
My gosh.
Have you never heard of the Baby Blue movie?
The Baby Blue movie?
Yes.
No, I've been out of
Wanda,
the
the
country a long time.
sadistic hypnotist?
No.
Marcia, the erotic
Oh,
housewife?
really?
They
I'm
started on our
missing out.
station.
Oh, I see.
You got to spend more time in Canada.
Yeah, really. It's a little cold, but I guess that keeps people warm, huh?
Well, we can get you a French synthetic coat. No, I say all of this to you, and I'm serious about it. I'm not trying to be...
I'm kind of prudish, you know.
Are you really?
Yes.
Why do you suppose that surprises me?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I'm prudish.
But then you are a surprise, you know. You are a surprise. It's what we were saying before about people approach you, and they have a pad and they have a pencil.
And a preconceived notion of who I am.
You're the one, if I may quote you, Ms. Streisand, in your prudishness, who said, one day I'm going to write a book.
And nobody will believe it.
Mostly because of all those crappy books that have been written about
yeah,
me, about people who think they know
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
about me and don't know me at all.
Yeah. You see, I think, too, that people, if you play a part convincingly, they think you are the character you play. In other words, there are probably people who think I am the prostitute in Owl and the Pussycat. Do you know what I mean? Or they think I'm Hello Dolly. They think I'm a saleswoman. Or they think I'm the pushy Jewish broad who's saying, I'm the greatest star. If you do that well or convincingly, I think people do think that's who you are. Don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But then you...
In other words, I think the closest character I've ever played to who I really am would be Anshul in Yentl.
How close? Close in spirit? Close in heart?
Everywhere, everywhere. See, in other words, I wasn't acting a part. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't having to be that prostitute in Owl and the Pussycat. I mean, I'm basically very shy, but that's not in the realm of thinking when you think of who I am.
No, it isn't.
Or being prudish or whatever, you know. Funny lady, I was playing Fanny Bryce and calling people kid and this and that was acting.
Barbara, maybe if more people had shown up to watch you in Up the Sandbox, they'd have a better picture of who you were way back. Because I think a lot of it was there.
Yes, it's true. But you see, it was a flop. I walked into that theater once and there were 4 people sitting in it. That's why I was so afraid of nobody showing up for Yentl, and I was pleasantly surprised. But I did feel that that film had a lot to say, but no one seemed interested in me playing an ordinary housewife, an ordinary person. In other words, they like me bigger than life, you know, saying grandiose statements like I'm the greatest star, which is okay too, but it's not necessarily all of who I am. I mean, there's, of course, some of me in there.
Gotcha. Why, during the production of Yentl, when people were treating you like a man, did you feel more and more like a woman?
The experience of being responsible for an entire film is quite humbling. You know, I felt very privileged to be having the opportunity to direct this film because it was such a difficult struggle to get it made. And I never wanted to have people feel like I was overpowering, overbearing, you know. I wanted them to feel part of my dream, that everybody was needed to fulfill this vision. And so I just found myself dressed as a man, you know, feeling very feminine. It was a strange situation, but people did treat me like a woman too. They didn't treat me like a man.
How do you know? How do you know you weren't being treated like a man? You were a woman pretending to be a man. How do you know what it's like to be treated as a man?
Well, I mean, the men were kind of slightly at times flirtatious with me. I don't think they would have done that with a man. I was definitely a woman. And it was a different kind of, I mean, experience, you know, like when I think, or as I felt as a woman directing, it was, I felt like I had to be mother to everyone. I felt like mothering, you know, nurturing, loving, supportive. There never was a moment where I could have even thought of losing my temper. First of all, I never lose my temper. Hardly ever. I've never done it on a set, really. But when it is your baby, you know, and the only way you get the best out of people is to have them feel good about what they're doing, feel important, you know, that it's like everything I've ever learned my whole life in therapy or about psychology, you know, everything came into play. Decorating rooms, decorating houses, building houses, painting rooms, buying silverware.
Asserting authority.
Asserting authority, but not in a dictatorial way, ever.
But why did you say after finding a therapist who, in your opinion, was a genius, that you found that you could assert authority? And the confusion in other people's minds was, everyone thought you'd had it all along. There are people who think that you may have had it at a prenatal stage. Never mind finding a therapist who was a genius. And you said, I'm paraphrasing, but the irony was, I never had authority until you found it.
I think everybody has authority. Everyone has the potential of their own personal power. And it doesn't mean power to rule, power to make movies, power to... it's not power in the sense of a king or a queen, you know? It's personal power. It's having self-esteem, self-awareness, you know? Saying to people that I have boundaries as a human being. Treat me fairly, and I will treat you fairly. Do you understand what I mean? It's a different kind of power. When you recognize your own power as a person, then you can you know, use that power to do whatever you do in your life. I mean, I don't care if you're a housewife. You have to have that sense of power in terms of wanting to be the best mother you can be, or the best wife, or the best homemaker, you know, the best nester. There's a sense of pride and self-awareness. Do you know what I mean? Power is a strange word.
But Barbara, how do you reassure the people who feel powerless that your power isn't negative? Rhetorically, I don't mean you, I mean one with power. How do you make the powerless feeling people feel okay? Well,
I mean, all I can say is that the first day that we were shooting our film, or rehearsing our film even, you know, I shook a prop man's hand, and his hand was all sweaty. And I asked him if he was nervous, and he said, yes. And I said, well, you know, feel mine. I mean, I'm more nervous than you. And we're all going to make mistakes. And me, I'm going to make most of them. So we're in this together. We have to help one another. And it's like, you know, he spread the word to this one and that one. They said, hey, you know, she's okay. And I was not afraid to say, I don't know something. You know, this is what I'd like to do, but I don't know if it can be done. I'd like to do it. I'd like to try it. You know, can it be done? Can we try to do this? And everyone got behind me. You know, everyone wanted to support me, because I never threw my so-called power in their face. You know, this is what we're doing. I mean, it was like, it just, I wanted to have it feel like a family, you know, like a team effort, like we were all working towards the same goal. And that's what happened. I mean, the cast and the crew were just wonderful to me, and never treated me as a so-called first-time director, or especially a woman first-time director.
So to go right back to the beginning, in terms of Yentl, and the fact that 15 years of your life are involved in this becoming a reality, we really have to go back to 1967.
68?
Well, 67 in terms of the end of principal photography on Funny Girl, and now, post facto, the symbolism of the exchange of gifts that William Wyler, out of respect and affection, gave you a director's megaphone.
How do you know that?
Because of your passionate interest in all aspects of filmmaking.
That's right.
But he also gave you what's known as a telescoping baton, not only because of your ear, but because of your immersion in the orchestration of the music. You in turn gave him an 18th century gold watch on which you had inscribed, "To make up for lost time."
Boy, I don't even remember that. Isn't that awful? Who told you that? Tally Wyler?
Yes.
What did I mean by that, to make up for lost time?
What do you think you meant reflectively?
Maybe because I was late in the morning sometimes. Yeah, that's probably it. I used to be late my first couple of films. A telescoping baton?
Mm-hmm. I thought maybe it was something, I don't have one, but I thought maybe it was something that Michel Legrand might own, or the Bergmans might have at home, or maybe it was just a baton that had an battery in it or something.
I don't remember that.
No?
No. But he was wonderful to work with. He was, he just had a great instinct, you know. He knew the truth, you know. He knew when the moment was right and when you could get more out of it, you know.
He was very complimentary about you, but so have a lot of other people been. Peter Yates, I was telling you that I had met him recently and talked about The Dresser, and he said that it was your unfailing professionalism and your style, and the fact that very often you were right, and people couldn't forgive you for it.
That's funny. We used to have that going on the set here with David Watkin, because we had a wonderful crew, and I would say, David, just why don't we put you know, raise the camera, or put another light over here, or let's add just a little smoke or something. And the crew used to say to him, David, she's trying to get you an Academy Award, you know. Don't fight. But he was very cute. He used to say, yeah, I like it better like this. And he was very disarming, you know.
Didn't you say about David Watkin, your director of photography, that he could photograph a crack on the wall and make it beautiful?
Yeah, he's very, very gifted. He really can light a whole set, and the actors can walk anywhere in it and still everything looks right, you know. He can capture the truth and reality, and yet with this fairy tale quality I was looking for all the time. Slightly unreal, you know, windows that you don't quite see out of.
This film is about human freedom, male and female, and what you end up with in a discussion that involves men and women after seeing Yentl is, why is the term daddy's little girl a positive and the term mama's boy a negative? Why, in your opinion?
Well, that's a good question. That's a very good question. That is very true, isn't it? I mean, daddy's little girl is obedient. Daddy's little girl is sweet, compliant. And a mama's boy, yes, would imply a sissy. It's a terribly, terribly unfair social conventions. I don't like them.
There's so much in Yentl, and the sexual ambiguity is such an issue. And when you sit down with thinking, caring men and women, when I think of Yentl, Anshel, sitting at the table, and when she begins, she begins to sing, No Wonder. The song moves on so many levels that at the end of it, we're already confused. Who is attracted, repelled, and afraid here? Yentl, Anshel, Hadass, Abigor, and I think it begins right off the top. That's a compliment to you and Jack Rosenthal. There's no time wasted.
I'm glad you got all that subtext out of it. That's good, because it's interesting how people perceive something. You know, they perceive a film by what they know, what they experience. You know, you could have somebody look at a film and say the film has no subtext because the person has no subtext, in a sense, you know. We see what we want to see. We see a reflection of who we are. So when you see all these things in the film, then that means to me that you're a very complex, multi-leveled individual.
Don't we also hear what we can afford to deal with hearing?
You mean what we can accept, what we can...
Yeah, what we're prepared at that point in our lives to deal with. You hear a song and you say, isn't that pretty? Or you hear a song and you say, the lyrics just changed in the middle of that song. She's not upset anymore. She's fascinated. She's not repelled anymore. She's enjoying it.
Well, the song No Wonder was meant to, I think Time magazine said it very well in a sense. It was like a series of commentaries on the evolution of womanhood, I mean, and her perception of femininity.
Ryan Linehan on location with Barbra Streisand. There was so much media that Barbra Streisand was a born-again Jew. And you said, I am not. I am a Jew. I have always been a Jew. I feel that I'm a good person. The Jewish tradition teaches you to be a good person. That's what it's all based on. And I
see, this is why I don't, you know, this is why I don't like the press very much. Labels, you know, I think they insult the intelligence of people. It's like, you know, the fact that I did research for Yentl, that I spent 3 years learning, so I could be prepared to make this movie. That has to get a label, a born-again Jew, because a magazine wants to do an article about born-again people, born-again Christians, and they figured I'd sell more magazines, so they put me on the cover and labeled me a born-again Jew. And this is what I resent, because even in Time magazine, which is he even mentions born-again Jew. And it's some woman wanted to do an article, never talked to me and put quotes around words that she supposedly says comes from my mouth. Barbara thinks this, Barbara says this. And you're absolutely misrepresented. Things taken out of context, you know, things I said 10 years ago in an article, misrepresented and so forth. No sense of growth, no sense of change. And I mean, I just think the public should be aware of things like that. To just don't believe everything you read. That's what's good about television. At least they see you. They, you know, unless you do a funny editing job, of course. Bloop, blap, bleep, boop, you know. No, you won't do that, will you?
Look into my eyes.
Yugoslavian, Irish.
Canadian.
What? Oh, God, I don't know.
No, that wasn't why I said look into my eyes. I was going to say, look into my eyes and see if you can say that I would lie to you.
I've been fooled before, though. I'm very trusting.
Barbara, I didn't propose. I said I wouldn't lie.
Oh.
Never, of course, moving right along.
Yes.
One of the other things that I wanted to ask you, when we talk about the fact that you are indeed not a born-again Jew,
No.
you are the woman you
I am
are
a
and
Jew.
the person you are. Can you remember now
A Jewess.
A Jewess. What happened to your person when you sat in that theater and saw the Diary of Anne Frank when you were 14 and said, that's it, I am an actor?
That was the first play I ever saw, and I just thought that, gee, I could play that part. I know what that feels like. It was actually very thrilling for me recently. I went to Amsterdam to see the Rembrandts and the Bruegels, and I went through her house, and that was a wonderful experience to walk through her rooms. But it was a thrilling experience, you know, sitting in the last seat of the balcony. I think that the ticket was something like $2.89 in those days. And there was something wonderful about not being able to afford to sit very close. Because when you sit far away, you see the whole stage. You don't see the reality of the actor's pores, you know, you don't see the makeup. You get swept along with the illusion, you know, with the make-believe truth. So I loved the theater in those days. Better than I do now.
Why don't you love it now? Because it was always the rehearsals you loved, the changes. You never liked it once they locked it. You said, now do it every night just like that?
Well, there is no such thing as doing it every night just like that. I mean, every night is new. Every night there's a different moment of truth. But I love experimenting. I love challenges. I love learning new scenes. You know, I love having the adrenaline pump and seeing how it's going to go over. And that's what I like about film, because you rehearse and then you film it, and once you've gotten it, you just go on to the next thing. It's really, really nice.
I believe that from the human being who said when she saw Gone with the Wind, she didn't want to be Scarlett O'Hara, Vivian Leigh. She wanted to be Scarlett O'Hara.
I said that too, yeah.
Yeah.
Where did I say that?
Long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Can I tell you something strange about being with you? I'm probably as close as you're going to get to what you don't get close to anymore, because anonymity is what you long for, but you can't have any. I'm the guy who went to the theater, who bought the movie ticket, who's sitting across from you telling you of the enthusiasm and the respect and affection from a distance that really is given to you. And I know there are lots of us out there. And I wish I could make it sound tougher and stronger.
Why?
But fine.
Why tougher and stronger?
You know why? The way this whole conversation began. It's having that awareness of thinking, well, if you were sitting across from Barbra Streisand, what would you talk about? What does one have in common?
It's
and
a
then
funny
you realize
thing.
everything. Living. Self-esteem, integrity.
When I was 17 years old, I wanted to get into Lee Strasberg's acting classes. And the procedure was you had to write a letter and wait about 6 months to get an interview with him. But I was always impatient. I could never wait 6 months, you know. So I was reading a book of Tennessee Williams' plays, and I called up his secretary, put on a Tennessean accent, and started making up this incredible story about how my parents are sending me back to Tennessee if I didn't get into Mr. Strasberg's classes, and so forth and so on. And the next day I get an appointment. I mean, the secretary fell for my story, and I went to see him. And it was funny because I said to him, when I got in there, I told him the truth, you know. And I said, he said, so you want to study in my classes? And I said, well, That's one thing, but I mean, I have a scholarship. I really don't have the money to study in your classes. I have a scholarship at another acting school, a teacher that teaches your method. But I really wanted to meet you. I wanted to talk to you about history, about life, about music, about art. And he looked at me not like I was nuts, you know? But I really meant it, you know? I really meant it. So I know what you feel.
I thought there is an addendum to that story.
When he came to see me?
Mm-hmm.
When he came to see me in Funny Girl?
And you talked about
and
preparation.
I
you
said,
teach.
tell me, I said, tell me, I feel inadequate because I just don't know how to prepare. I mean, I walk out on the stage and I sort of get hit with the audience, and there I am. And he said to me, your preparation is not to prepare. Which was great. It was a great relief, because then I didn't feel guilty anymore that I wasn't doing the work, you know. He was right. I used to come out and fortunately, my first moment was to look out at the audience. And so during that look at the audience, I could evaluate how I felt, what I felt that night, what I felt about them, who I thought was there. So the looking at the house was the preparation, was the work, was the truth, you know. The actual being there, not preparing before, but being there.
Why now is there such a fear of facing a live audience? Or has that been exaggerated? Do you really fear a large crowd of people in front of you now? Do you know why?
Well, I was singing at the Central Park concert, which was about 135,000 people, and it was during the Arab-Israeli war. And my pictures had just been banned in Egypt because was making a film with Omar Sharif. The Egyptian government banned the pictures. And so I was frightened. You know, I was frightened, and I kept moving around on the stage so nobody could get me. And I forgot the words to my song, which really scared me. It's a terrible, terrible feeling. You know, you could talk to many, many people, and they say, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you get up there, and, you know, if I ever had to get up there, boy, I'd be so nervous. Well, I say, yeah, me too. You know what I mean? I'm just like you. I don't want to get up there in front of all those people either. You know what I mean? So the nightmare of forgetting the words, you know, is just awful. I'm going to work on it, because I hope to be able to conquer that fear. Or if I forget the words, so I forget the words, I'm human. There's that expectancy, you know, that a star is not human. It's like I'm an image to some people. I'm not flesh and blood. I'm an object, you know. And I used to sing, after that experience, I went on stage clutching my words at the Forum concert for McGovern. I had the 15 songs written in my hand, which is so ridiculous. Well, if I forget the words, what am I going to do? You know, go page 2, page 3, and look up the words? It's nuts.
When I think of the friends that you talked with, and Jim Brooks was talking about the trepidation with which he approached directing terms of endearment. So he kept phoning friends who were directors and writers and taking them to lunch and saying, so what'd you do, so what'd you do? And I think of you, and I think of your friendships with Sidney Lumet, Mark Rydell, Steven Spielberg, the people in the business.
How do you know I'm friends with Sidney Lumet? How would you know that?
Well, I know Sidney Lumet.
Oh, are you the show he told me about? He called me after he saw Yentl. It was one of my most thrilling phone calls from Sidney, because he loved Yentl so much, and I was so happy, you know, that he loved this film, because he had once wanted to direct it. He once wanted to direct it, and he didn't think it should have music in it then, and he said, Barbara, I was wrong. And he loved the music, and he's a wonderful director. I admire him, so I was thrilled. But we're not like friends. You know, we go back, though.
You're friendly.
Yeah, I mean, but I didn't talk to him before I made Yentl.
Okay, but I've mentioned a lot of men. What I really wanted to find out in saying that to you was, there's Goldie Hawn, Jane Fonda, Lee Grant. There are a lot of women taking chances. Not quite the one you did, successfully. But I just wonder if there's a little fraternity or sorority Is Goldie Hawn a friend? Is Jane Fonda an acquaintance? I mean, have any of you discussed projects that might bring all of you together?
Absolutely. Well, I'm developing a film with Goldie, and I'm developing a film with Jane.
Well, that answers that.
Yeah, yeah. After I did Star is Born, you see, when I got a lot of flack when my name said executive producer on Star is Born. I think it started a new trend for women. And I remember the people they hated it. I mean, the industry was shocked that it said executive producer. And I thought, why? You know, I was responsible for all the money above $6 million. It was my company producing the movie, and I had final cut. And so it was very interesting, their reaction, except like Jane Fonda called me and said, thank you, because now, you know, I'm going to start my own company. And she's been incredibly successful, and she's a wonderful woman. I admire her. And I can't wait to work on a film with her.
You've made more than one analogy about Yentl being a child, giving birth. You hope the child is okay. And you're also the artist who is able to say that you never thought you'd ever have a child. You thought you were different. And sometimes you look at your son Jason, who is a young man, and you remind yourself that he is yours. You carried him. He's your child, and he's sitting at the piano composing music. Is your son's life leaning toward music? Is music his passion?
He likes to make, films. Films are. As a matter of fact, he's making a film this weekend with my mother and my sister and the neighbor and his father. And I might come over and assist him, you know, maybe be a continuity girl or something.
Barbara, before you began principal photography on Yentl, one of the extraordinary things you did, at the encouragement of your brother, Sheldon, he had been to a medium, or a parapsychologist, or whatever term one wants to use, and you went and you communicated, you believe, with your father. You got a message. The message encouraged you to make the movie. Since the completion of the film, have you gone back to the medium to find out your father's reaction to the film?
No, no. I don't believe really in tampering with that outer world, shall we say. It was something I needed to do at that time because I just never felt my father's spirit. I never felt him. I never felt I had a father. I never had a picture with my father. So it was something that I just had to do. And that day I had gone to the cemetery to visit my father's grave, which I had never done. And not until I got home and had my brother took a picture of me with my father's tombstone. That's the only picture I have with my father. Did we discover that the tombstone next to my father had a name written on it, and the name was Anshul, which is the character in Singer's story. And that was very motivating for me, because it's too coincidental. Did you know that story?
No.
Yeah. And something else too, it's on my father's tombstone, which says beloved teacher and scholar, and there's a Phi Beta Kappa key. And on the top it says, because it uses Hebrew names, my father's name was Emmanuel, which is Mendel in Hebrew, son of Yitzchak, which is Isaac, his father. And then later on, when I showed Mandy Patinkin this picture of me with my father, he said to me that his name in Hebrew was Mendel, and he had just had a son named Isaac. So, somebody's up there.
We talk so much about your father. You have a brother, a mother, and a sister. Is your mother so expansive a woman that she can take in what this film means to you and share it with you?
I think she can now, yeah. At first she was very skeptical. She was like the typical mother who was crying on the phone saying, you can't make a movie in Czechoslovakia, there's a war in Poland, and they haven't got fresh vegetables there, and it's so far away from home, and you know, how could you go away like this? And so she really didn't want me to go. She was scared. But she's told me, you know, recently too, that my grandfather was a cantor in Russia. And my mother has a beautiful voice. So she always wants me to remind everybody I got a lot from her too.
Sure, was your mother. I'm mixing up titles now. But I was thinking how ironic that Yentl is being distributed by MGM UA, and your description of your mother taking you to that audition at MGM, and you remembered the dress you were wearing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember what you sang?
Yeah.
What was
Have
it?
You Heard by, you know, Joni James. I sort of copied her, you know. MGM, wasn't that funny? In a glass booth, too. And the man just said, thank you. And that was it. It's all ironic. I mean, there's some thread here somewhere, you know. Some path of destiny, somehow. Even though I believe, and the line is in Yentl, after I saw a rabbi talk at a synagogue in New York, where he was talking about Holocaust victims, and he was talking about why the Jews went to their death so silently, why they accepted God's will. You know, well, if God's will is for us to die, then we have to accept that, rather than fighting back, you know, and say, I'm angry at God. I disagree with God. I will not accept His will and go to my death, you know. And he said that you cannot accept fate. You know, there is no such thing as fate. We make our own fate, which is more the individual's responsibility for himself than relying on, well, God's will. God will take care of me. It's that old cliche, God helps those who help themselves, you know. And I really, that was a kind of profound, that had a profound impact on me, too, you know, in terms of, if I sit around and wait for something to be handed to me, you know, then I'll be this little old lady saying, you know, I should have made Yentl. And that's when I said, no, I'm going to make it. And, you know, if it's successful, that's wonderful. If it's a failure, that's also okay, because the reward for me was in the process, was in the search, was in the work. The joy is in the work for me. That's what a lot of people don't realize, in a sense. I am not a star. You know, I don't like to be considered a star. I'm embarrassed by that aura. I'm a hard worker, you know. And that's what I love, that's what I believe in, and that's what I'd like to be respected for.
You are.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed being with you.
Me too.
I hope it's the first of several encounters.
Who knows?
The shadow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.